THELAFEMODL. The letter from the lawyer came on a Tuesday in March, and I almost threw it out. I get mail like that sometimes. Refinancing scams, class actions I don't remember joining. I'm 34. Live in a studio in Ridgewood that smells like the Vietnamese place downstairs. And I haven't sold a painting in 2 years. I pay rent by teaching watercolor to retirees on Wednesday nights. I opened it standing at the counter, eating cold mulmain out of the carton. Dear Miss Vance, this office represents the estate of Marguerite Vance, your great-aunt, who passed away on February 14th at the age of 91. Ms. Vance has bequeathed to you her residence at 1147 Grand Street, Williamsburg, including its contents and all artistic materials therein. I had never heard of Marguerite Vance. I called my mother in Akron. She was on her second glass of Pinot Grigio, which is the only state she answers her phone in anymore. Marguerite, she said slowly. Oh, that one. Your grandfather's older sister. Left Ohio in the 40s. She was an artist. Some falling out. She just stopped existing in our family. She left me her apartment in Brooklyn. Honey, do you know what those go for? Sell it. Take the money. Don't get tangled up in some weird old woman's thing. You're 34. You need to start over. I'll think about it. The building on Grand Street was a 4-story brick walk-up with a fire escape rusted the color of dried blood. David Lavin met me on the stoop, a tired man in his 60s with eyebrows like white caterpillars. Your great-aunt occupied the top floor. She owned the entire building. The lower 3 floors have been vacant since the 80s. He glanced at his watch. She left an estate of approximately $1.8 million in addition to the property. You are the sole beneficiary. I felt my stomach drop. She never met me. I am aware. The bequest was unusual. Shall we go up? The stairs creaked. On every landing, the wallpaper had been scraped down to bare plaster. Not torn, but methodically removed, as if someone had been preparing the walls for something, and then stopped. He opened the 4th floor door with a brass key. The loft was beautiful. That was the first thing I thought. A single enormous room, perhaps 60 feet long, with cast-iron columns down the center and tall industrial windows on the south wall. The air smelled of linseed oil, turpentine, and something underneath, something faintly sweet, like the last day of a bouquet. The long walls were lined with canvases, hundreds of them, stacked face out in long rows. Portraits, mostly. The light in them, the skin, the way the subject seemed to be almost looking out of the canvas, the way a person looks at you when they're about to say your name. I have stood in a lot of galleries. I have looked at a lot of paintings and thought, with the small, mean, honest part of myself, I am better than this. I did not think that here, at the far end of the loft, beneath the largest south-facing window, was a single canvas covered by a paint-stained cloth. David Liven cleared his throat behind me. That one is the reason I asked you to come in person. We sat at the wooden kitchen table. Your great-aunt began the painting beneath that cloth in 1983, he said. She referred to it as the work. She did not show it to anyone. For 40 years? 41. She mentioned it in every revision of her estate. The last time I saw her, in September, she told me that being unable to hold a brush at the end caused her, and I am quoting, a grief beyond bearing. What does she want me to do with it? She wants you to finish it. Finish it? That is her stated wish. The apartment, the building, the money, all of it is yours immediately. There is no mechanism to compel you. But her last wish was that her great niece, a painter, would finish the painting on the easel. She had been following your career. I don't have a career, Mr. LeVay. I haven't sold a painting in 2 years. She had a great deal of confidence in you. I looked at my hands. Small. Capable. They had not held a real brush except to teach watercolor in 11 months. Can I see it? I pulled the cloth off. For a long moment, I didn't breathe. The canvas was perhaps 6 feet by 4. A woman, life-size, seated in a wooden chair against a dark green background, nude, perhaps my age. Her body had been painted with such attention, there is no other word, that I felt for a vertiginous moment that I was looking at a person trapped behind glass. The skin was alive. The light moved across the collarbones the way light moves across a real collarbone. The vein at the inside of her left wrist was visible, and it had been painted in a blue so specific I could not begin to imagine the pigment. And the face was unfinished. From the collarbones up, the figure dissolved into bare canvas. There was no neck, no head. The body was a masterpiece, and where the face should have been, there was only the dull cream of primed cotton. Waiting. I stood there a long time. I can't finish this. She believed you could. This is the best painting I have ever seen, and she wants me to finish it. There's a box of her notes. Lavian set a lacquered wooden box on the work table beside the easel. On the work table by the easel. She wanted you to have them. You have my card. Call me when you've decided. I heard his footsteps going down the 4 flights. Heard the front door open and shut. I turned back to the painting. It was still there. Still impossible. I walked to the wooden box and opened it. Inside were 17 leather-bound notebooks. I took them home that afternoon. I sat in my studio in Ridgewood that night, with the bag on my lap for a long time before I opened it. I made coffee. I turned off my phone. I started with 1983. I read for 16 hours. By the time gray dawn came up over the rooftops, I had not slept. My eyes felt full of sand. I had read all 17 notebooks. I had read some passages twice. I understood now why Margaretha had not finished the painting. I understood what the painting was. The first notebook started as a working journal. Sketches, composition studies, color tests. Then, on April 14, 1983, the entries changed. I have been trying for 3 weeks to mix the color of the inner wrist. The blue is wrong. Every blue I make is wrong. There is a warmth inside the coolness, a sense of the blood being alive, that does not exist in any pigment I have ever used. 10 pages later, I drew my own blood today. I felt the room go cold around me. I drew it with a hypodermic from the inside of my left elbow. I let it sit, then mixed it warm with a grain of ultramarine. I worked it with the palette knife. The color, dear God. The color. The notebooks went on like that for 41 years. Marguerite had figured out, slowly, what every color in the painting required. She kept careful records. She was a scientist as much as an artist. She developed a taxonomy of the body, what each tissue offered and what each tissue could not give. Blood, drawn warm and mixed quickly, gave reds and violets no commercial paint could approach. Bile, harvested from her own duodenum during an outpatient procedure she had paid a doctor not to question, gave the ambers and ochres of warm shadow. The clear fluid from a blister gave a quality of skin luminescence no glazing medium could replicate. The whites of the eyes. And here Margarethe noted she had been able to obtain only a very small quantity, harvested with extreme care during a tearful episode at her own bathroom mirror. Gave a highlight so true that the painted highlight seemed to catch the light in the room and throw it back. The painting on the easel had been built over 4 decades out of Margarethe Vance. That was why it was alive. That was why she had never finished it. In the last notebook, dated 2023, the face is what remains. The face requires more than I have ever been required to give. It requires a young body, a body in its full life, a body that has not yet been spent. I have followed my great niece's work. She has the eye, she has the hand, she has, I think, the hunger. She will finish what I could not. The face will be her face. I closed the last notebook at 6:14 in the morning. Somewhere down the hall, a baby was crying. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. I thought about Margarethe, 41 years in that loft, drawing her own blood, weeping into a small glass jar so the highlights in the painted eyes would catch the lamplight. I thought about my career, the JCC on Wednesday nights, the patient retirees calling me honey, the gallery that had folded, the editor who paid late, my mother on the phone saying, "Take the money, start over." And I thought, with the small, mean, honest part of myself about how beautiful the painting was. I thought I could finish it. I thought I am the only person in the world who knows how. I did not call David Lavin in the morning. I took a shower. I packed a duffel bag with 3 days of clothes, my brushes, my good palette knife, and the small leather case of medical supplies my ex-girlfriend Megan had left behind when she'd moved out 2 years ago. Megan had been a nurse. There were still syringes in the case, and isopropyl alcohol, and surgical tape. I took the L train back to Williamsburg at 9 in the morning. I let myself into the loft. I pulled the cloth off the painting. I got to work. The first thing I needed was the blue. I laid out the syringe, the alcohol swab, a glass dish, a grain of ultramarine on the tip of a palette knife. I tied a tourniquet above my left elbow, the way Megan had shown me once on a slow Sunday afternoon. I found the vein on the second try. The blood came warm and dark and surprised me with its heat. I filled the syringe to 10 cc's. I untied the tourniquet, pressed a cotton ball to the puncture site with my thumb, and tipped the blood into the dish. I added the ultramarine. I worked it with the palette knife. Oh, the color. It was every blue I had ever tried to mix. It was the blue I had been looking for my whole life. Living blue. It was the color of being inside a body that was alive. I dipped my smallest brush. I walked to the canvas. I found the place on the inside of the woman's left wrist where Margarethi had laid down a faint underpainting in pale ochre, waiting. I painted the vein, just that one careful curve of living blue, 3/4 of an inch long. I stepped back. The vein was alive. The whole painting was alive because the vein was alive. The woman in the chair had a body in her now. She had not had one before, not quite, but she did now. Because I had given her my own. I looked at the painting for a long time. Then I went to the kitchen and ate a granola bar and drank a large glass of water with electrolyte powder, because the notebooks had been clear. Drawing blood makes you lightheaded. I could not afford to be lightheaded. There was so much work to do. By the end of the first week, I had given the painting more of myself than I had ever given anything. I had refined the technique. 4 cc's from the right arm, 4 from the left, alternating puncture sites, leaving each one to heal. I had figured out that bile was beyond me. I had no doctor to bribe. But I could approximate warm shadow with my own blood, ground charcoal, and a single drop of tear fluid I induced by holding my eyes open in front of a hot lamp. I had finished the woman's hands, the curve of her hip, the small, soft shadow beneath the breast. The painting glowed. I had not gone home. I had not called my mother. I had been sleeping on a small cot in the corner of the loft that Margaretha had apparently used for the same purpose. I ate from the corner deli, going down twice a day in a paint-spattered hoodie and dark glasses, paying cash from an envelope Marguerite had left in a drawer. The man at the deli, Mr. Sharma, had begun to recognize me. He called me Miss. Working very hard, Miss? Yes, don't forget to eat. I won't. He always put an extra banana in my bag. In the second week, I ran out of easy places to draw from. Both my arms had begun to bruise badly. The veins did not heal as fast as the notebooks had suggested. Marguerite had been younger when she wrote those entries. I was 34, and I was not eating enough, and my body was not replacing the blood the way a healthy body should. I read the later notebooks again, the ones from her 70s. Marguerite had moved to the femoral vein, in the inside of the thigh. More private, easier to hide. A larger vein, a richer color. There is a deeper red there, almost a violet, that does not come from the arm. I put the notebook down. I went to the bathroom and stood in front of the small, clouded mirror for a long time, looking at my own face. My face was thinner than it had been 2 weeks ago. My eyes had grown larger. There was a smear of cadmium red on my left cheek, and a smear of my own dried blood on my right. And I had not noticed either one until I was standing in front of the mirror. I looked, I thought, like a woman in a painting. I looked like the woman in the painting. I thought about that for a moment, and then I pushed the thought down, the way you push down a thought about an old grief. And I went back into the loft, and I rolled up my lift pant leg. I found the femoral vein on the 3rd try. In the 3rd week, the gallery world began to call. Lavin had mentioned the painting to a few people. A woman named Marisol Hayes, who ran a gallery in Chelsea I had been trying to get into for 6 years, left a voicemail. Hannah, hello. This is Marisol Hayes. I'd just love to come by and see what you're working on. There were 3 more calls like it in the next 10 days. I did not call any of them back. I worked. I had moved on to the chest now, the collarbones, the hollow of the throat. I had figured out how to harvest the clear fluid from a blister. I had burned the inside of my own forearm with the hot end of a palette knife, just enough to raise a small dome of clear skin, then drained it with a sterile needle. The result was astonishing. The skin in the painting now had a glow under its glaze, a quality of being lit from inside, the way real skin is lit from inside by the body beneath it. I burned myself 4 more times after that first test, once on each forearm, once on the inside of the left thigh, just below where I had been drawing from the femoral, once, very carefully, on the back of my left hand. The painting was the most beautiful thing I had ever made. The painting was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever made. I knew this the way you know you are in love with someone before you have admitted it to yourself, a kind of helpless animal certainty in the chest. The painting only needed a face. I had been avoiding the face. I had told myself for 3 weeks now that I was working up to it. that I was building the body first because the body was what I knew how to do, that the face would come when the face came. But I had known since the first morning what the face would require. The face would require my own. Marguerite had been clear in the final notebook. The face required the whites of the eyes, harvested in a quantity not survivable from a single donor. The face required the fluid of the inner ear, extracted by a needle through the eardrum. The face required the fat of the cheek, which gave the highlight along the cheekbone its impossible warmth. The face required the marrow of the small bones of the wrist, which gave the deep tone of the painted iris. The face required me. All of me. I read her final entry on a Thursday in April, by the long gray light of the south windows. I had taped it to the wall above the easel so I could see it while I worked. The handwriting was very steady, even at the end. The cost is your body. I want to be honest with you. The cost is your body. You will not survive the finishing of the face. I have done the calculations. There is no version of this in which you survive. But there is also no version of this in which you go back to teaching watercolor at the JCC. There is no version of this in which you become the great painter without finishing this work. You are a good painter, Hannah. You are a good painter who will be a forgotten painter. You will die in a small apartment at the age of 78, and your paintings will go to a thrift store. And within 50 years, no one will remember you painted at all. Or you can finish this painting. You can be the painting. You can be looked at every day by every person who walks past this canvas in the Great Museum, where it will eventually hang for as long as the Great Museum stands. The choice is yours. I think you will not walk away. I think you understood the moment you pulled the cloth off the easel. I am sorry. I love you, though we never met. The work is the work. The work is all there is. Finish it. I read it one final time. I folded it. I put it back in the box. I closed the box and set it on the work table. I walked to the bathroom. I brushed my teeth slowly, the way my mother taught me when I was a little girl in Akron. I washed my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. The thin, sharp face I had begun to grow over the past month. The face that had begun to look like a painting. And I met my own eyes. I thought about the JCC, the patient retirees. Honey, what color do I use for the sunset? I thought about the editor who paid late. I thought about every gallery that had not called me back. I thought about my mother on the phone 3 weeks ago, saying, "Take the money, start over." I thought for a long time about starting over. Then I walked back into the loft. I mixed my last colors. I laid out the syringe and the scalpel and the small, fine needle. I took down the brushes, the smallest, finest ones I had bought from my thesis show at art school 12 years ago. The ones I had been saving all this time for a painting that would deserve them. I picked up the smallest brush. I turned toward the canvas. I began the face. The painting hangs now in a private collection in Geneva, It was acquired in 2027 for a sum the auction house declined to confirm. It has been exhibited only once, in Vienna, in the autumn of 2029. The lines stretched around the building. One woman, a retired school teacher from Linz, wept in front of it for nearly 2 hours before she could be persuaded to leave. It depicts a woman seated in a wooden chair against a dark green background. She is nude. She is perhaps 34 years old. Her body is rendered with such fidelity that visitors have reported feeling they were intruding on a real person who had not consented to be looked at. It is the face, however, that visitors remember. The face is the face of someone who has been seen completely. She is looking out of the canvas at the viewer, and there is no other word, alive. She is looking at you. She is aware of you. Visitors who have stood in front of the painting for any length of time have reported the sensation that she is about to speak. Several have reported that she has said something to them, in a voice they could almost hear, in a language they almost understood. Most visitors do not stay long enough to hear it. The few who do tend not to talk about what they heard. The artist is listed as Marguerite Vance, 1933-2024, with a parenthetical note, completed by Hannah Vance, 1990-2026. The painting has no title. It does not need one. It is a painting, after all, of a woman in a chair. And the woman is looking at you. And the painting is alive. And she has been waiting a long time to be seen. She is glad you came.